Hello and welcome to today's session, Why Governments Work Simple in the Cloud. I'm Caitlin Klom, a solutions engineer here at Box and your moderator for today. Before we begin, we would like to recognize our gold sponsor, Carasoft. Carasoft helps government agencies find the best technology solutions at the best possible value. We thank Carasoft for their amazing and continued partnership with Box as we jointly help our public sector customers with their modernization initiatives. So today we're going to be diving into 3 areas, including the new remote workforce, the need for digitizing remote services for employees and citizens, all while creating that secure content collaborative environment. We know it's been a challenging year. 2020 has provided incredible stress. Citizens are needing more, employees are transitioning to remote work, and we are seeing political changes happening at all levels. At the same time, legacy systems are being taxed and paper-based processes can no longer be supported. When we break it down a little further, there are 3 areas that agencies are commonly facing challenges in. Organizations are needing to enable personal and team productivity at scale. We are needing to digitize citizen support and engagement of current needs while also responding to new and emergent requirements as well. And finally, data security and privacy are becoming even more critical in all these areas. We know work patterns are changing. By analyzing shifts in locations that our users logged in from, we can see a clear pattern. For instance, during the first week of March, we saw a 20% shift in the primary location of users in Washington state, suggesting that they were starting to work from home. By the 3rd week of March, the majority of Washington customers had shifted Box access away from their primary location. Looking at a broad mix of other states, they showed similar patterns as well. So work is happening 24/7. The lines between work time and home time are blurring together. Overall views of files on Box during off hours of 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. increased 20% year over year. Among industries, we saw the highest growth in off-hours work was in transportation and logistics, industrial goods, automotive, professional services, and public sector. It's becoming increasingly more important for teams to remain digitally connected to their work. The state and local government industry has the largest growth in collaboration, with a 142% increase in collaboration invites sent from February 2020 to March 2020. Other industries are seeing increases as well. Healthcare providers had a 30% uptick. Life science companies had a 20% increase over that same time period as well. So now more than ever, public agencies are requiring that ecosystem of technology. From field operations for inspection processes to case management to citizen engagement, the list goes on and the needs are expanding both internally and externally. At the same time, we are needing to reduce compliance and security risks and increase the availability and scalability. And now is really the time for the leaders to break the mold. So before we get into the panel to discuss these topics further, we wanted to quickly highlight how one of the customers of Box looks at cloud services to bring businesses and processes to scale. So joining us today is Haley Archer from NASA, and she's part of the Flight Operations Collaborative Services team. Haley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Awesome. Well, just want to quickly hop in before we dive into all the questions. If you wouldn't mind, could you just take a minute to just introduce yourself and a little bit about the role that Box plays at NASA?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, I'm Haley. I work at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, in the Flight Operations Directorate. We are the premier flight operations team on and off the planet. Our main mission is to select and protect the astronauts and to plan, train, and fly human spaceflight and aviation missions. So kind of when you think about like our environment and our audience, they're highly intelligent STEM type people who support innovative spaceflight. So I joined the Mission Systems Division 6 years ago as an intern in the IT services branch. When I came on full time, I immediately became the SharePoint lead. And so being involved as the SharePoint lead kind of drove my passion for content management, and kind of seeing all the different areas of having, multiple media storage systems that have kind of grown organically over time. And so as we naturally began to kind of move towards a more collaborative digital landscape, I spearheaded a move to Box as our cloud-based solution for our documents and document-centric processes. So in the past, we, FOD, have been somewhat hesitant to migrate our data to the cloud just because of the unknown kind of risks of what the cloud may be. But we are a decisive organization. So once we decide to do something, we commit to that path. So we're realizing the value of collaboration and the functionality that Box provides us. And so I would say within the past year or so, we've really started getting introduced to Box, but the past couple months, we've heavily dove into Box and figuring out how it can work for us.
And I know that your team is always continuing to work on new business processes, and you've really been one of those agents of change with technology, which kind of brings me into the conversation around the culture change and managing that culture change to migrating from one solution to another. So, what is your approach to introducing these new tech and then helping the culture adopt and start to really scale it out?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite subjects, actually, because I'm a computer engineer by trade, but I'm a total extrovert. So to merge the two worlds together, I love it. The first thing and the only, really everyone's going to say this, communication, and even more communication. So one of the things that I've kind of implemented is focusing on like a few key points of contact throughout FOD and kind of making them our trailblazers or like our champions, and keeping that line of communication open and consistent with them. So, we have our teams together. We're constantly doing like feedback sessions, and feedback is one of my favorite things because I tend to foster an environment where they may think they're giving negative feedback, but what I really see it as is an opportunity to learn what's kind of really important to my users. So by kind of fostering that community of allowing them to come to me and explain why this was frustrating, or maybe even like why this was a good way to do something, it's really helped enable our users who want to be able to be those trailblazers as well. Because you'd be so surprised how many people actually want to change to modern technologies. You just kind of have to figure out what motivates them.
And as you start to adopt these different tech pieces and cloud content specifically, there's a kind of routine that you're going into place of, start here, then we move into this process. Can you kind of talk to me about your deployment strategies for your team as you start to push this out and get those trailblazers engaged?
I actually did this kind of a unique way with Box. I noticed that like how we were interacting with our data and our content was almost archaic in a way. So we had so much like information all over the place and various data sources. And when I'm talking various, I'm talking like at least minimum 12 that I know of have most of our like data. And so I sent out a survey that basically covered people from flight directors to astronauts to senior management and software developers, all levels of employees. And I said, hey, what tools are you using? And also, how much time are you spending looking for things? Just looking for a random PowerPoint or even just a fact in, a piece of knowledge. And so 43% of our users said that they spend up to 2 hours a week looking for stuff. So 10% of our users said that they spent over 6 hours per week looking for content. And that was surprising to me because when you kind of multiply that out across all of our employees in flight operations, you're looking at 150,000 labor hours per year just looking for something. And I thought that is like a gold mine when it comes to proving to people we're not doing something right. And so, I did my research. I made a matrix of all these different tools that are available on the market. And Box happened to be in my matrix. And then the agency started to kind of adopt it as well. And I was like, this is the perfect time. Like, let's start moving. And so one of my biggest strategies on getting everyone on board is showing them kind of why we need to do this. 150,000 or 150,000 hours, that's a lot of time that people are just looking for something. That's not work. And so I eventually found my key points of contact. I found the people who gave me that negative feedback. So the people who were constantly saying, oh, I can't find something. Haley, where is this? Or Haley, this is such a mess in this file share. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I would find those people and I would target them, and I would find out what made them tick. I wanted to know what they were looking for, and then I made them one of my champions. So I brought them into our pilot. They have been learning all about Box. I've made them, do some relay type work, and it's actually working out really well, because then that translates back to their group, so that train the trainer. They eventually can go back to their group and say, hey, Box is way better than this file share structure that we've had before.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that same, I know your pilot groups are always really engaged users. And so tell me a little bit, when we hear the word pilot, sometimes there's, people say like, oh, I'm just piloting to pilot, but you're piloting to scale, to really push this out throughout, you're not only at Johnson, but all the way out throughout the whole agency. So how do you present the pilot to your user groups, and how do you start that communication out with, the start time, end time, and beyond?
That's a good one. I always tell them, this is your chance to make this tool work for you. I am giving you the opportunity right now to make sure that when we implement this, I'm not just saying, oh, here's your tool, have fun. I'm making sure that we're implementing it so it has the right structure, the right functions, the right everything about this tool can fit the way that your business and your group does its work. And I think that's been highly beneficial, is allowing, those pilot users kind of who are down and in the weeds, kind of like almost like a grassroots type campaign, who are down in the weeds of work every day and get frustrated with our tools, allowing them to basically say, I want it to work this way. Then it helps a lot with the other individuals within their org or their specific branch kind of adopt the technology as well.
Yeah, and on that same piece, as you talk with other organizations and other agencies, I'm sure, where do you see the biggest opportunity, or what are you most excited about as it relates to cloud content within, local agencies all the way up through federal agencies?
I think looking at the strengths of how technology meshes with your mission or your agency's mission, or just the force of the agency, can really be brought out to understand how cloud computing can really help any kind of government work. So if you come at it from a perspective of cost control, you're not going to have as much success. When you're dealing with, mission or engineering oriented groups, functionality is king. So it doesn't really matter how glossy or shiny your tool is or how amazing your pitch was to the CIO. These engineers and these innovators, if it doesn't meet that piece of functionality that they want, you're not going to see adoption. And so I think the biggest opportunity here is just finding out how tools can match with the needs of your mission.
So, when you have a lot of content that you guys are working with every single day, and data and content security is a focal point to everything you do. So as you are starting to work with different groups, how are you educating, or when users are coming in asking you about this, what do you typically tell them to really ease their minds as they start to share their content?
Right. Okay. So, first off, telling them that there are better ways to do things has helped a ton. So I would say from a cultural perspective, we're very engineering driven, and we tend to use tools that some people would consider brutal or not friendly, not user friendly, because functionality, right? So this kind of has played a part in the adoption of software as a service, or even just cloud computing in general. So, one of our favorite phrases from our users is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If I'm storing something on my local PC, it's safe, right? So as we kind of moved through the pandemic, that has kind of probably been one of our bigger pushes in demonstrating to our users that the cloud is secure or can be secure. So, when we were moving to all these different platforms so that we could work virtually, it was interesting to kind of explain to them, like, oh, you can store this level of data in the cloud. And I would get so much pushback. I would just hear constantly, oh, no, you can't. Oh, how is that safe? Is it encrypted? How is it encrypted? And so when you kind of bring the facts to them, it turned out really well, actually. We started to really have a collaborative digital landscape across the board. So I think just kind of understanding your users and explaining to them the different technology behind the cloud and understanding how it's secure, where it's being saved, who can access it. That has helped a lot.
And then one final question for you. Over these next 6 to 12 months, what are you most excited about? What are you working on? Anything fun that you can share with us? I know you probably have something. You're always working on something.
Yes, I'm so excited. So we have just started to get into a consulting program with Box on Relay. And so we've been working on a ton of our business processes that are completely cumbersome or done in email. I mean, documents are not going to go away, right? We're always going to have documents, but having them in the cloud and using Relay to move a document through an approval process and get signatures from management and then push it to an official policy, that has been insanely fun to watch the admins of these processes realize, oh, wait, I don't have to print this out and walk it across the building to so-and-so's desk, because you don't. In Box, we can just automate that whole process. And one of the biggest things that we're looking at right now is building out a taxonomy within Box and making our folder structure kind of surround our taxonomy. And I am so excited. I'm a bit of a data nerd. And so I've known that over the years, people have tried to do this, and it's just been a huge challenge to tackle. And I've started wrapping my hands around it and having that taxonomy and then building it out in Box, and then having Box our authoritative data source for these official documents and processes. I just think it'll really make the lives of our flight controllers, our astronauts, our flight directors, and everyone else in FOD just a little bit more simple.
Well, Haley, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us today. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and thank you for sharing your story with everyone here on the session today. So.
Yeah, you too, Caitlin. Thanks for having me.
And now to continue the conversation further, I would like to welcome our panel, Deidre Hollins, Deputy Chief Information Officer at Idaho National Lab, and Dan Alt, the Assistant Town Manager and Chief Information Officer for Town of Cary. Dan, Deidre, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So before we begin, if you guys wouldn't mind to just each take a minute to introduce yourself and a little bit about how Box has played a role within your organization.
Hello, my name is Deidre Hollins, and I am the Deputy CIO at the Idaho National Laboratory, where we enable science that matters. Box plays a great role in our environment. It enables us to easily and securely collaborate internally and outside of our organization. It has allowed us to have overall visibility of what data is being shared and also track who we're sharing this data with. As we know, data is a big deal for us. And in addition to that, we're excited about the user experience of Box. It's easy, easily adaptable. People have quickly caught on, and it's becoming more and more used within our environment. And more importantly, overall, we know we're able to share data securely.
Dan Alt, Assistant Town Manager and Chief Innovation Officer at the Town of Cary. Cary, North Carolina, we're about 170,000 residents right in the middle of the Research Triangle area of North Carolina, bordering Raleigh and Durham. And Box in my role in why I'm in Cary is all about creating the local government of the future. And for us, we really see Box as the centerpiece of that. It's been that since 2017 when we first started piloting Box. So for us, it's about culture change. Having Box employees mix and working with our employees helps accomplish that. And then Box becomes a vehicle that allows government employees to really grow and to transform with technology change instead of it happening to them. So I think what's been wonderful about Box is both Box and the town of Cary, we share a longer term vision where I think there's an understanding of that what we're doing isn't just about short-term marketable results. It's really about creating the civic infrastructure of the future. So that impacts every department, which there's over 20. So we're in many ways like local government, in many ways is like GE. We have lots of verticals. And it's wonderful for really the first time in history to be able to bring them all on the same platform.
So Deirdre, let me ask you, with digital transformation happening at a more rapid pace, what has your team been most surprised by?
Oh, so we're most excited about the digital transformation is the use of robust cloud services. We've been able to enable tools in a much more efficient manner with cloud services. And the agility with cloud services allows us to have faster turnups, and we're able to justify the cost. In our regulated environment, we have been able to leverage our FedRep moderate tools where we no longer have to maintain the security controls. We're able to do things now that the private sector has been doing many, many years ago, and we're finally catching up.
On that same trajectory, Dan, can you talk about some of the examples of changes happening before COVID versus today and how you're really using cloud to support your constituents?
Yeah, so I think, well, first off, local government fundamentally, our overall responsibility, the number one priority is public safety every day. That's been since day one of our existence. Local governance is about public safety for civilization. So strangely, although we haven't faced a pandemic in our time or several generations, it does fall squarely into what we were founded for. So in many ways, it brings us back to our roots. So before the pandemic, we were on a trajectory, I think, to change the culture. And we were methodically working through the organization, putting in a 311 center, which we launched in January. Knowing what we know now, that isn't necessarily the ideal time to launch, but in many ways, there never is. So we got thrown in the fire, and that forced us to change behaviors, which is so important because that was probably my number one concern. We had a high sophistication score before. The adoption blew me away. To see people in different departments such as fire getting trained and certified in Box, that's a dream come true for me because there's so much potential there when those are your top users. But to really transform, behavior change has to happen. And so the pandemic really kind of has become a catalyst for that. So I like to call it the ameliorating secret in government. You have to turn lemons into lemonade or else you're just not going to survive. And so, the new reality meant that we had to think different, act different, but still execute at a high level because citizens depend on us actually more in many ways than before during these times. So it's kind of a conundrum where the resources become less, but the demand becomes more in government during these times. So that really has now positioned us, I think, to come back and hopefully really make some larger behavior changes since everyone's been having to change their daily routines, change their lives. It's hard to change habits. And so now that we're kind of in that mode, that's really where our focus is over the next few months. So all of the work in advance, building culture, laying groundwork with the Box Transform consulting team for 3 years is going to pay off. And I think the acceleration everyone's been kind of waiting for is going to start to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that, we all came into, the year with a plan and that strategic roadmap and a vision for our organizations. And I'm sure that's been flipped upside down for many of us. So tell me, I would love to hear from both of you. Deirdre, we can start with you of kind of what is your vision over the next 12 to 18 months for your organizations?
Well, here in Idaho, at the Idaho National Laboratory, my goal and my vision is to leverage more so all of our collaboration tools that we've had in place that weren't adopted prior to COVID-19. Things like Teams or, just collaboration tools here in this culture and environment weren't really adopted. It was more of an in-person conversation to get things moving. And now moving into this remote environment, it's becoming more accepted. And my goal is to keep that going and to enhance that. They're so excited about things that we're doing, like we're having town halls, we're streaming town halls more frequently, and the communication that my team gets back. We're so glad that your team's able to host these town halls, because now we feel like we're more in the know than we've been ever working at Idaho National Laboratory. But yeah, so pushing cloud, pushing collaboration tools, moving to the next century of technology and accepting the new technologies is one of my big goals and visions here at Idaho National Laboratory.
And Dan, same question to you. Tell me about your plans and goals over these next 12 to 18 months for the town.
Yeah, that's a great question and very timely. It's something that we've put a lot of focus on in August, is determining just that. How do we maximize the opportunity with what's realistic? And it's just sort of ripened, and psychologically, and the readiness is there for us to really think big and test small. And by that, I mean really the whole kind of system. So I know Box likes to use the hub and spoke analogy. So I think what I'm really hoping to do over the next 6 to 12 months is fill out the spokes off the hub. And there's probably a few that, are still kind of, maybe they're not quite there yet, but we can custom build what maybe becomes a solution. But then, testing all the scenarios that are part of modern civilization, and really understanding what are the timeless truths and what are kind of the elements that we become tone deaf to, and bring those up to kind of the modern times. The cities, in many ways, you feel the law of entropy in play. So they start off very, very simple. Like there's just a couple of people that found them. And then every day it just gets more and more complicated, like exponentially. And so because of that, we need to somehow be able to have the best of this expanded world, but then still be able to zoom into the micro and understand how conflicting values are kind of being pushed on continuums in a way that really today is very difficult as a city manager. So for me, that means it's about, kind of continuing to test what scenarios we're going to encounter in the future, and then continue to just keep scaling. And what that will do is it will, our employees will continue to grow, and fundamentally it disappoints them at a rate they can absorb. That's the most important thing. And either, I think 12 months from now, it will be, really starting to model that local government of the future. So it's a very exciting time.
And on that, kind of going into the innovation discussion, Deirdre, your team continues to innovate and transform under your leadership. And I'd love to hear from you some of the learnings that your team has been sharing with you as they continue to expand and, to Dan's point, kind of push out the different spokes within their cloud solutions that you all are using there.
So one thing I want to expand on is one of our biggest lessons in using cloud services in our environment. Understanding the process to get government approvals has been like one of the major learnings for individuals within my team. I mean, there are so many technologies out there. Getting the government approvals is so important. And what we've learned is, through this, we're learning the formal process. We're meeting the requirements, we're understanding more so than ever what risk acceptance is. And then finally, checking the box across the board, we're able to obtain the official AO, the authority to operate. But that process alone has been huge for our organization. And I will honestly say that's been one of the biggest learning points for us. But we've been able to incorporate and bring in some really great tools using this process, but it was really a learning process for us.
On this, continuing on with this topic, Dan, earlier in our conversation, you had talked about how you guys are using cloud content in a myriad of ways. I know you had mentioned the 311 program. Would you mind just taking a moment and sharing one of those projects with us of how you're utilizing cloud to support?
Yeah, I mean, the exciting thing is there's literally too many for me to share, so I'll try and step in on a few of the recent ones. But it is really kind of like a dream come true to see the pieces come together. Because it really is that hub and spoke, and content, unstructured content in particular, that proliferation, that I think can actually explain that entropy I was talking about as well as anything, the exponential data that's there. But then boil it down to really simple tasks such as inspections, fire inspections. We were able to kind of implement a mobile inspection app instead of using paper. And the fire department was able to configure and take advantage of the Box platform, and then also we're connected into Salesforce. And so that's really, it seems so easy and simple, but it's actually a remarkable story at how quick we were able to do that and what a culture shift that is in that industry, and what that could mean across the country. So that's one great example. Our staff report process was the first one we used, which is, if you think of it like our version of legislative bills being prepared that we put for the council. It impacts every department. So that has been an extraordinary example. And then 311 and also public safety data, having that accessible and metadata from it available to frontline employees, we call them citizen advocates, is invaluable. It tells the story. It changes things from, there used to be kind of a scarcity of understanding or being able to connect to something, to now it's plentiful, and we can take advantage of artificial intelligence and other tools in a meaningful way, not in a point solution way. So yeah, it's exciting and allows us to be flexible with what tools we use. And as we extend out into citizen services, it allows us to be flexible and secure with what tools they want to use.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of both that internal and external collaboration going on. So there is this big conversation that is now starting to happen in almost all of our daily conversations around content security. This has become very much a hot topic. So Deirdre, can you speak to the needs around external sharing and why cloud-based solutions really have provided you that secure space to share content?
Well, we're totally excited about marrying the whole concept of risk acceptance and collaboration. Prior to using Box, that we were having difficulties with sharing information outside of our organization, and some of that data is more sensitive than others, and just the ease of use of Box has just been great for our organization. And again, there are many tools out there for external collaboration, but cloud services such as Box has made that transition so much easier, still while being secure.
And Dan, same question to you. Tell me a little bit of how you guys have gone around your securing your content, both internally as well as that external sharing that you guys are doing with your constituents.
Sure. And actually, going back to your earlier question about what is on for the next 6 to 12 months, I neglected to maybe say the most important thing, the most important focus is defining what it is that we're doing with everything that we do. So it's exhausting, but it's defining what is the objective that we're trying to achieve at the highest level, and then it kind of works its way down, and using that to inform the how-to. So for me, the what is timeless. The how-to evolves. and the how-to gets informed from how you define the what is piece. And so in the manager's office, it's our role to define a lot of the what is and provide the blocking so that our teams can implement the how-to. So security is a great piece to that. It's a timeless thing that cities have to secure information. I think the Neo-Assyrian Empire is the first ones with their system 5,000 years ago, which was functioning the Pony Express. Okay, they had a need for security too. The way they set it up to have trust with the local population, to have trust with the other government employees. And today that's modern citizen advocates, those frontline employees. And so it's hearkening back to those important truths of what we're really trying to do. It's trying to be transparent. It's trying to be authentic. It's trying to allow future generations to understand the context of decisions. It's in an age of instant, instant information can be spread, regardless of geography. It's important for us to stay disciplined, but at the same time be responsive. And so that's a very difficult line to walk in an era of proliferating content. So for us, using Box Shield and using artificial intelligence to improve our policies and to be able to both enable transparency, but also enable security and compliance that's the business we're in. So we don't stand a chance without it.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm sure this is a big part as you are evaluating different technologies. Deirdre, I know, data and security are extremely important to y'all in your daily mission. So can you tell me about, as you have a tech stack of different tools that you're working with, but tell me, what is the process as you start to evaluate these technologies? What feedback would you give to your peers as they start down this journey at their organizations?
So we've all heard it before. The first thing we must do, and this is cookie cutter, but I'm going to say it anyway. We must define the problem to solve and define requirements. We have to do that. And I stress it more than you would know. Truly defining the requirements of what you're wanting to what you need within your organization, making sure, and then you have to check check the box for those right in our regulated environment to meet the security posture of DOE. So it's if we don't check those boxes, and as you know, we are baited quite often by many different companies with many different solutions. But if we don't fulfill those things first, it's a moot point. So I stress that all the time. We have a great BA business analyst team that works with the different organizations within INL to make sure that we check those boxes when considering different solutions within our environment. But I say it more than you would ever know. And that's been a big deal for us.
And one final question, and then we definitely have some questions coming in, so I want to give some time for y'all for that. But when it comes to cloud content management, why is good enough just not enough?
Well, I think just turn on the TV, look out the window. The expectations. Yeah. The expectations of citizens. Everyone's in over their head. I would say is kind of a feeling, and local government's on the front line. It's the part of the branch of the government that you can touch, the people you trust, you can actually yourself engage with every day. It's not just about voting on election day. You literally can participate in democracy in your community daily. And it's incumbent upon us to create new infrastructure that facilitates that facilitates an informed citizenry, that facilitates all those essential elements that, are timeless, that go back to our founding, which was founded very much at the local level, at the town hall level. And that is our roots. That's why the British couldn't stop us, was they couldn't stop people meeting and governing themselves, bottom line. And so that's something that we need to remember. So we need to restore some governor of geography so that people understand that the ground that's beneath them and around them, that is important to understand how they interact and how they can collectively improve things. We can make a difference around the world locally because we're all networked now. but that's where we do our best work, is people to people. So it's so important for us to be finding that new infrastructure, or else, industrial revolutions, they change forms of government if you look through history. So we have to be part of developing that infrastructure. It won't happen on its own.
Thank you both so much. So, we do have a couple questions I would love to ask that we've seen come through. So, Deirdre, as you're going through and you have these different checks and balances that are going on, the question really was around, that messy middle. And what do we do when we're doing the innovation and we get into that messy middle of analysis? And how do you push your team forward to get over that finish line?
For those situations, as you know, things happen. We're in a very, very, we're in a regulated environment. I won't say strict. And things happen. So, with a solid plan and clear communication across the board, making sure everyone's on the same page and we're following things, tooth and nail and being flexible are the way that we push through those messy middles. Where I can tell you it happens all the time, and there's always something in each project that we're doing right now. But just that communications, clear lines of communications, a solid plan, and being flexible are the things that I'd say how we get through those things.
And Dan, a question for you is around, you have a lot that you have going. You have a lot of different tech things that you have going within your spokes and things that you want to do. How do you pick, what's the next thing? What's that evaluation of the next project that really is your team's focus?
In the initial kind of onset, there were some things that prompted the initial use cases I mentioned, like staff reports, that I was very much directing, if you will, here's some ways to get us going. After that, it's been, I've had some suggestions. There's been some requirements like getting through and one going, but it was very much kind of a very open opportunity for people to demonstrate and push the envelope. I wanted to see who is willing to push it as hard as they could. So kind of remove all the training wheels and see what happens. And there was about 3 years of that, and we learned a lot, and that we used that to help form and realign our teams. So after coming from another city, we really just listened, watched, observed for 3 years. And that's paid off. Now going forward, what we're doing, as I talked about earlier, about defining what our ultimate objectives are in creating that new civic infrastructure, and then kind of viewing from the inward circle out, what are the essential elements? And they boil down to a couple of things. One is fundamental responsibilities are that we're regulators, we're facilitators, and we're innovators. So those are the three kind of behaviors local governments exhibit. And then at the end of the day, everything comes out of the ground. So land and geography and having things associated and tied to various constructs of land is essential. That's what we govern, and that's where everything comes from. So that element, along with then the people, which 311 really is essential for, as well as 911. So those are the center points, and then it's kind of slowly marching out from there. And really, for the most part, what will change things is things could ripen. So what I mean by that is the community's readiness and the urgency among factions, internally and externally, will help drive some things from being kind of maybe further out to pushed up, or other things to be pushed back. So it'll be from those inner points of people and land, and then from there it'll be based on kind of what ripens, and that'll be driven by staff and the community.
As we start to expand out our teams, Deirdre, this question would be great for you, is on just recruiting and getting people excited about public sector technology. This is a cool space to be in. So I guess, as peers are starting to look for individuals to bring onto their team, what are attributes that you're looking for, outside of course, public service?
Well, I'll tell you, in Idaho Falls is a small town of 66,000 people, and recruitment is tough because I'll say some people would never even think of coming to work in such a remote location. But I'll tell you that recruitment has become one of my one of my sticklers. And what I share with my organization across the board is, and being that this where I work in an environment that's not as diverse as my previous employers. I tell them recruitment is everyone's responsibility. So I've challenged my employees to be mindful and share any positions that we have in their professional networks, just to get more people looking to come to Idaho National Laboratory, because we're doing great things here. We're doing big things here, and just getting a more diverse candidate pool is my goal here. And I'm hoping that not just our recruiter who's putting the PDs and job descriptions out there on the typical recruitment sites, but everyone. It's everyone's responsibility to recruit. And I myself have even started to post things myself in my professional networks, just to get more of a diverse candidate pool, people with all talents, to consider Idaho Falls and know that we're doing great things, and that we want great people to come to Idaho to work for Idaho National Laboratory.
And Dan, just one question, final for you as well, is regarding just success and success metrics. And, there are some ROI pieces that we can tangibly put on things, but there's a lot of ROI that can't necessarily have a dollar and cents associated to it. So how does your team overall just define success for leaders and your constituent base?
That's a very challenging question in government, and especially in local government. And so for us, that's been part of defining what our objectives are, what success is, both for individuals, for the community, for our council, and then just for ourselves. Like, what do we feel as public servants? We can put a dent in, and then what do we know and ethically know we are stewards of that and have a responsibility for. So for us, there's particularly 4 political values that we really are working towards as part of this effort to better instrument individual rights, social equity, efficiency and greatest good, and then participation. The challenge is those values, you can never have all of them at once. They're always in some sort of tension and conflict. And so it's really kind of understanding that everything that we do is fundamentally probably overall good, but inherently is good and bad, meaning it impacts somebody somewhere somehow negatively. So it's getting out of a mode of thinking there's a point where we arrive or we hit a target and then something is everything's done. Every day there's challenges. So what we need to look at is, how do you measure solving problems before they exist? Well, it's looking at behavior changes. It's looking at people giving back to their community. There are prosperity things that we can look at, such as increased values and tax revenues, but that alone doesn't tell a story. And so I think that for digital transformation, I'm looking at the sophistication of our employees and how they've grown personally. So those behavior changes are the most important thing to demonstrate if we're really living the local government of the future, and if we're anchoring ourselves in those timeless values versus short-term, objectives that are pitched as like it's good or bad. And in reality, time always kind of shows that it's a combination of two. So it's a very difficult thing to be able to demonstrate how you've solved the problem before it happened, but something that we got to get better at.
Wow, Dan, Deirdre, thank you so much. I know we could probably continue this conversation for days, but I really do appreciate you all taking some time to actually connect with us, and to the people listening in today. We hope that this has given you some additional insights as well on some approaches and strategies that you can leverage to be resilient, remain efficient, and effective during these unprecedented times. So thank you both so much for joining us. And for those that are watching live, please make sure to check out our next session, Transforming Your Agency in the Cloud. And then also, please don't forget to join us for our Public Sector Ask Me Anything with our Managing Director, Sunny Hashimi, at 1:30 Pacific time. So thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.